Hello, today I want to talk about something that I've been observing for the past few days, which are the protests in Thailand. That's regarding the amnesty bill that current Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra proposed that has stemmed these protests that now want to oust her as Prime Minister, because many are claiming she's a puppet for her brother, Thaksin Shinawatra, who was ousted in a coup several years ago. Now, why I want to talk about this, because tens of thousands of people have been showing up to these protests, if not hundreds of thousands all over the city. So here are just a few photos that I took just this week from the protests. Now, I think it's a great thing that people are protesting corruption in governments, but here's the root problem of this protest. The problem with these protests is that, sure, you can kick a corrupt prime minister out of office, but if you do, if the system is corrupt, which obviously it is because the system is electing corrupt politicians all across the world, then the system will just replace a corrupt politician with another corrupt politician. And it will try even at times, like in America, to sell you that corrupt criminal politician as a good guy, as they did when so many Americans were disenchanted with George W. Bush. They replaced him with Barack Obama, who falsely sold the American people an elixir of hope and dreams, when in reality he was just a pawn for the same people that put Bush in power. So when we look at, and you can see time and time again, the same paradigm all across the world. When you look in Mexico in the year 2000, I believe it was, Vicente Fox was the first president in over 70 years, that was not elected from the Partido Revolucionario Institucional, and that was basically the ruling party for more than 70 years in Mexico, the PRI. And again, he ran on a platform, although he preceded Obama. Obama seemed to live and learn from Vicente Fox, where his rally cry was, instead of hope you can believe in, was ya basta, which means enough, because he said enough of the corruption we've had in Mexico for 70 years. I'm going to come in and change it. What happened? Nothing really changed. And in fact, many key members of Vicente Fox's cabinet resigned within his first term, within the first, I believe it was the first 2 years of his term, because they said, we don't even recognize who this guy is that we supported, because he said one thing to get elected, just like Obama, but yet he did an entirely different thing once he got elected, because he was just a puppet being controlled like like a marionette on strings by those in power. If you don't understand this, just look all around the world. It doesn't matter. If you look at France, what is the difference between Nicolas Sarkozy and the current president, Francois Hollande? Not much at all. And you can see this time and time and time again. So the problem with not addressing the root issue. It's like, if you want to get a corrupt politician out and the system is corrupt, you are just going to get another corrupt politician, no matter what the people kicking the current politician out are saying. So, the problem here is it's kind of like if you were against the corner crack dealer and you didn't recognize that there was a power behind that crack dealer, right? The drug cartel boss that's supplying all the crystal meth to your community, that's destroying your community. So, and the crack and the heroin and the cocaine. So you just get rid of all the corner dealers, and what happens? The drug cartel boss just replaces all the drug hustlers, all the street corner dealers that you just got rid of with new ones, and they come in, and that is exactly how the political system works. So if you really want to understand how the system works, just go to the link below in this video. I'm going to put plenty of links in the description of this video that you can go check out. I highly recommend that you go read an article by Simon Johnson, who was former chief economist of the International Monetary Fund, who said that bankers run all countries. He said whoever has the money runs the country. So it's not the prime ministers, it's not the presidents. You kick out a corrupt president, like we did with Bush, you get another corrupt president, like we have now with Obama. You kick out Yingluck Shinawatra in Thailand, you're just going to get another corrupt prime minister precisely because it is the banking elite that are in control of everything in your country. And you need to understand this. So as I always say in all my videos, do not just take what I say at face value. Go do the research yourself, because that is the best way to learn the truth. So while these protests are admirable, they are not attacking the root of the problem, which are the families that have the money and control the monetary supply in your country. It is the bankers that are the problem. So the prime ministers and the politicians just take advantage of that. If you want to really understand, there's nothing honorable in prime ministers and presidents today all across the world, because they just use it as a career stepping stone to really make their money through corruption when they retire. If you don't understand this, look at Al Gore. Look at how he used his whole global warming platform to make $500 million. That's correct, $500 million after he left the vice presidency of the United States. So go Google that and understand how he made his money through carbon taxes. If you want to understand how the global warming carbon emissions tax theory is a scam. And again, for all those people that are huge environmentalists, what I'm saying, so you have to be intelligent enough to kind of dissect what I'm saying. I'm not saying that there is not proof that there is global warming. I'm saying there is not sufficient proof that carbon emissions is the cause, and that allows governments and bankers to institute carbon taxes to make money like Al Gore. As I said, go investigate how Al Gore made $500 million. Go look at in the UK when Tony Blair retired. He is making tens and tens of millions of pounds today. Look at the dozens of limited partnerships he had to form to hide all the money he is making from the very banking and oil and gas interests that he supported when he was Prime Minister of the UK. Look at how JP Morgan has given him a $3 million retainer fee after he left the prime ministership. Look at how Zurich International in Switzerland gave him a $3 million retainer fee. Look at his other limited partnerships that are declaring profits of over 12 million pounds. You got to understand this. You got to understand that when Obama leaves, he will become a very rich man by the very corrupt criminal bankers he supports today. Now, the other thing we all have to realize is how our leaders use certain platforms to divide and conquer those of us that should be united against them. So when we look at, again, I'm going to come back to these protests in Thailand, because literally hundreds of thousands of people have been coming out to protest the Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra of Thailand. Now, when these protesters protest her corruption, they will say that they will be in opposition to the poor that support the Shinawatras. Now, the poor support Shinawatras because Yingluck's brother, Thaksin Shinawatra, actually implemented a lot of policies to help the poor out. And also, there's been plenty of rumors that have always circulated in Thailand about the politicians buying votes. So politicians giving 1,000 baht to every person if they would vote for them. So of course, people like this corruption. So they said, so the thing is that we got to look beyond the what's in it for me. Okay, that's what a lot of people do. They only look at what's in it for me. So they overlook all the other corruption because they are personally benefiting from something that corrupt politician does. So in other words, if I'm a poor person, I get 1,000 baht and I get other policies. We overlook all the other massive corruption that that politician is guilty of and all that other criminal behavior, because we say, hey, I like it. I'm getting some money, so it's good for me. And that is a ridiculous ridiculous way to look at things. And at the same time, nationalism, you have to understand, is also a platform, a paradigm that people in power use to divide and conquer people. So my feeling is in Thailand, Thais shouldn't just be looking at, what is best for Thailand. They should be looking at what is best for humanity. They should be looking at how can our protests serve as an example for the rest of humanity, because it's not just Thailand that's suffering, it's Ireland that's suffering, it's Portugal that's suffering, it's Spain that is suffering, it's Italy that's suffering, it's the United States that's suffering, it's Argentina that's suffering, it's the Ukraine, their massive protests in Kiev and the Ukraine, their protests that you probably never even heard about. You know, there were 400,000 people that protested in Israel, the corrupt Rashid controlled government there. And that is out of a population of only 12 million people. That's massive, but yet the media never cover this. You never hear about things like this. So there are protests of people suffering everywhere. I remember when the US first went to war against Iraq, I would hear not all the time, but sometimes I would hear from people that I consider to be, like my coworkers, I consider to be totally rational people and intelligent people that would say, oh, I hope we go over and just bomb Iraq back into the Stone Age. And that's what nationalism does to people. It makes them irrational, uncritical thinkers because it appeals to the emotion instead of to logic. Why would you want that? Why would you want the death of innocent millions of people, which eventually what the Iraq war is responsible for, the death of over 1 million innocent Iraqis. What kind of monster would want that? But yet, that's how nationalism twists people's logic. So in protests, when people are just thinking about their country, we need to look at the bigger picture of humanity and say, how can we affect change? Because we know people are suffering in every country in the world economically. Recently, I was in Australia visiting a really good friend of mine who is a teacher, and she does wonderful work with Afghani refugees in that country and teaching them English. So I met 4 of the girls that she teaches English to, and there are 2 Zaras, so Zara, and then Soraya and Sumaya. And they were all about 15 years old, and when you meet someone that comes from a country that's been afflicted and burdened by the great emotional tragedy of war for their entire lives, and you meet these people and you see how wonderful these people are and how they can contribute to society, how they can once again be filled with the wonder of life when taken out of that situation, then you would never be so nationalistic to just blow off people that you don't know because they live in a faraway country as lives that are not worthy of saving, and of lives that that are disposable. Because you have to remember, during war, most of the casualties are innocent people. And that is a fact if you go look it up. You have to realize there is a common denominator. Why people are suffering economically everywhere. Why there is corruption everywhere. And it is because the moneyed banking families that control the monetary supply in your country are corrupting the politicians. So you gotta get to the root of the problem. Kicking out a corrupt politician is not gonna solve anything. Kicking out the bankers will. It will show you resolve, and it will actually show you understand, like in Thailand now, all the protesters have really not been met violently by the government yet. But if you look at Occupy Wall Street, when they were enlightening the whole world to the truth and the criminality of the bankers, you saw what happened. JP Morgan made the largest donation of millions of dollars to the NYPD, the New York Police Department, to suppress the protesters and to go beat them down and to end the Occupy Wall Street protest. So if the people in Thailand shift their focus from the Prime Minister and shift their focus onto the corrupt bankers in Thailand to get them out of the country, then they will really see Who holds the power? Because I guarantee you there will be no more nice government. There will be, the bankers will definitely implore the military then to go shut up the protesters. You see this throughout history. When Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War did not bow down to the 24% interest rates that the Rothschilds wanted from Lincoln to fund the Civil War, he was assassinated. You see John F. Kennedy, when he dared oppose the bankers, he was murdered. You see Ronald Reagan, when he dared to say that the IRS was obsolete, was un-American, and that the gold standard should be, he actually formed a committee to study the gold standard for backing the US dollar with gold. What happened? Attempted murder again against Reagan occurred. We must look to address the head of this monster. It's like Medusa. If you keep addressing the snakes and cutting off a snake from their head, the new snakes will keep growing back. But if you cut off the head, and the head of this monster are the bankers, then you solve the problem of having corrupt politicians as well. Not only in your country, which is great, but in all countries, because you will open up and awaken people's consciousness all over the world by protesting the proper root of the problem and not just the manifestation and the symptoms of the problem. So I implore everyone to start looking at a bigger picture of humanity when trying to solve problems in your country, because that will certainly help us. You know, like I said, we got to stop this what's in it for me mentality or what's in it for my country mentality, and we got to broaden our horizons to say what's in it for humanity. How can we make life better for everyone? Not just for my countrymen, not just for my countrywomen, not just for my particular socioeconomic demographic. Because I've heard that even with Obama. I've heard from people I know in the military. Well, I like Obama because he gave us a raise. So you overlook all the other corruption. No, you have to understand that people know that drug dealers have used this very tactic as well. They give money to all the poor people in their community, and then the poor people love them. So you're getting fooled by the same tactics that drug cartel leaders use, and is ridiculous. We got to start using our brains, using our intellectuality to see through these schemes and stop falling victim instead, and stop allowing ourselves to be used as pawns in this global banking chess game. We have to be better than that. We got to do better than that. So we need to recognize that any time politicians want to conquer those of us that should be united against them, they're going to appeal to emotional things like race, religion, money. They're going to appeal to emotional things. And what we have to understand is we have to look at the big picture. We got to look at, because integrity, truth, honor, courage does not have any race, does not transcends race, transcends religion, transcends all socioeconomic status. So that's how we must look at people, and stop supporting people that just does something that helps you if they do not meet those other standards of integrity, truth, honor, courage. That is what we need to look to in our leaders and the people we support, and also to ferret out all the corruption that there is and to get to the bottom of what the root problem is. So we need to look at everything in this world that is wrong today. We probably live in the most war-ridden time in history right now. And this is super ironic because I know almost everyone that's watching this video probably was not alive during World War II. But you know what they said about World War II, if you know your history, that was the war to end all wars. In our society today, our leaders are making a mockery of that. Look at the wars that persisted now for over 2 decades in Iraq, in Afghanistan. Look at what's going on in Sudan now, in Syria, in Libya. You know, actually former Prime Minister Tony Blair went to Libya at the time when Gaddafi was still alive, on Gaddafi's private jet plane. So what's the common denominator again? Bankers, money to be made from war. So there's Mali. I could go on and on forever about all the wars going on right now. So when you understand that there's money, banking, interest behind this, and people making a killing from war, profiteering, then you also understand the corruption and politics that are causing all these protests. And you have to understand that these protests are a good place to start, but not a good place to end. Because the people, I guarantee, the people in Thailand that think they will have won if they kick Yingluck Shinawatra out of office and get their man in office, that the corruption will never end that way. You got to take it all the way to the root of the problem, which are the bankers. So the last thing I also want to talk about is the solution, which is still turning to physical gold and physical silver as money and not fiat digital currency that's backed by nothing but air and the massive debt of governments. Because you say that the US dollar is backed by the US government, but the US government is, when you take into account all off-balance sheet liabilities, all unfunded liabilities, is $220 trillion, which is enough, you know, $1 bills laid side by side to go to the sun 93 million miles away and back 83 round trips. So that is ludicrous. You're not going to solve this problem without solving the banking problem. So when you look at gold and silver as money and why that's a solution, again, I've gone into that tons of times in other videos on my YouTube channel, so you can check that out. You can look at the descriptions below, which I'm going to put a link to my book, The Golden Gift, in which I talk about why this is a solution, and also why other people that say the gold standard is ridiculous, like Paul Krugman, Nora Ribini, are just banking shills. And the only reason they say that is because they're working for the bankers that want you to live inside their matrix of this Ponzi fiat currency scheme that they're operating today. And the one thing I don't understand, because there are a handful too of gold supporters out there that will always deny gold manipulation. And given the fact that there is documented evidence from central banks where they admit manipulating the gold price. We have former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan that said, testified before Congress that if the gold price got too high, that they would knock it down. So you have documented proof all over the place. You have a former board member of the Federal Reserve, I believe his name was Alan Blinder, said the last duty of a central banker is to tell the public the truth. So obviously they're lying when they say they do not manipulate the gold price. You have, not only that, you have former very high cabinet members like Assistant Secretary of Treasury Paul Craig Roberts that says, I cannot understand why people cannot see that the price of gold is manipulated when there is tons and tons of not only circumstantial evidence, but actual concrete evidence as well. You have very high-level whistleblowers like Karen Hughes from the World Bank that also says undeniably gold is manipulated. So why are there other people that are saying they know more than former high-level government cabinet members, and they're calling people that believe in the price of gold, that believe in gold price manipulation as tin-foil hat wearers? Well, I think there's only one of two reasons. One is, A, they're just incapable of critical thinking, which goes back to the videos I made about institutional education, pounding in rote memorization, and stripping away all critical thinking skills from adults as they go through the system. So that is either one. Or two is the more nefarious reason, which I also think is present in some of these supposed gold advocates that say there's no gold price manipulation. Anyone that says so is a moron. Their reason for saying that, I believe, it's my speculation only, is that they don't want to hurt the business they're in, because they know that a lot of their clients don't subscribe to those policies. So if they start talking about it, they're going to lose a lot of profitability in their business. And that is terrible, because they are doing a disservice to humanity, and they are serving side by side with the devil and trying to perpetuate a Ponzi fiat currency scheme that enslaves humanity instead of helping people. Again, this goes back to my, people have to stop this what's in it for me. I believe those people are only saying that because they look at it, what's in it for me? If I come out and say that, they're going to lose a lot of business. So I'm not willing to tell people the truth, and I'm going to be a pawn and allow myself to be used as a pawn by the global bankers so my business can continue to remain healthy. And that is ludicrous because they're doing a disservice to humanity, and that's a despicable act. So as you noticed, for those of you that follow me on Twitter, follow my Twitter feed, I said on Christmas Day, gold and silver near guaranteed to be up or at a minimum flat, and of course that's how they ended the day, even though I tweeted that out during Asian hours. Because I said, why? Because the bankers that manipulate the gold and silver prices in the futures markets are off for Christmas. Now, almost at the end of every month, they slam the price of gold and silver as well. And what I'm going to tell you is because probably most of these bankers are off between Christmas and New Year's, that probably happened to a much lesser degree, if at all, this time around. So watch that as well. So there's so much proof. I mean, almost on every day that the New York and London markets are closed, gold and silver will be either up or flat 99% of these days. But you never have a day where gold is waterfall declining like $40 an ounce in half an hour, and thousands of futures contracts are dumped onto the market on a day when the US and London bankers are off. Yet there are people who say, no gold manipulation. That is just insane, and it's doing a disservice to humanity. So it's the same as if you went to, because people say, oh, there's no concrete evidence. Sure there are. Because just go to GATA's website. You can see that there is plenty of documented evidence as well as amount of circumstantial evidence. Because they'll say, oh, it's just conjecture and whatnot. But that's like going to the killing fields in Cambodia when Pol Pot killed 1 in 5 of every Cambodian citizen. Seeing all the skulls, so you can't prove those skulls are from Cambodians. They could have been anyone. They could be people murdered from World War II and just brought here and made you to believe in this fantasy that Pol Pot tried to purge every educated, cultured person in Cambodia. That's ridiculous. That's what I think of the gold price manipulation deniers. That's how little I think of them, because they're doing such a disservice to humanity. So in the end, again, always think for yourself. Again, I'm going to put a lot of links, remember, in the video description below if you're watching it on YouTube, so you can do your own research. Because I think if you do your own research, then you'll be much more inclined to find the truth and then believe the truth. So as I said, don't just believe anything I say. Do your own research. And as always during this holiday season, realize that we are all struggling economically no matter where you are in the world. So please be extra kind and generous to one another. And as always, remain intensely curious. Thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, so long.